Hello and welcome to The Unbiased View with your host, Evan Wargo. Here at the TUV, we'll cover topics ranging from politics to the meaning of life itself. The Unbiased View, where facts break through, no twists, just truth, a clear worldview. So grab your earbuds, sit on down, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the TUV podcast. So everyone knows that elections are important. But do you know just how much is riding on this next election? Well, for starters, let's talk about the current world events. We've got Gaza, housing prices, which affect pretty much all Americans, abortion rights, which affects pretty much all women in America, and school shootings, which affects pretty much all children in America. But first, let's start with Gaza. On October 7th, assaults originating from Gaza resulted in the loss of over 1,200 Israeli lives, leaving thousands wounded and approximately 240 people held as hostages. Israel quickly responded with military actions targeting Gaza, and because of that, the toll in Gaza has been devastating, with reports totaling the loss of at least 31,000 Palestinian lives, with women and children counting as 70% of the casualties. Now let's talk about housing. As stated by a real estate executive, the American housing market has become exceedingly costly, with income needing to surge by 55% to render purchasing homes affordable for the average American. Now let's talk about abortion. An abortion refers to a medical procedure aimed at terminating a pregnancy, which is a fundamental healthcare requirement for almost all women, girls, and people that can become pregnant. Globally, about 1 in 4 pregnancies end in abortion each year. Access to abortion stands as one of the most fiercely debated issues worldwide, with the discourse often muddied by misinformation regarding the real consequences of limiting access to this essential, let me remind you, this is an essential healthcare provision. Now for the one that you've probably been waiting for the most out of these, school shootings. Every day in America, 12 children lose their lives to gun violence, while another 32 get injuries from gunshot wounds. Worse than that, 1 out of 10 gun deaths are of the age 19 or younger. Approximately 4.6 million children in the United States reside in households where at least one gun is stored loaded and unlocked. These unsecured firearms have played a role in incidents such as school shootings, suicide, and the tragic deaths of family members, including infants and toddlers. So now that we've gone over the current world events, now let's talk about the candidates for this election that we've been talking about so much. I'm going to start with Donald Trump. In the 2016 presidential election, Donald Trump secured victory as a Republican Party nominee, defeating Democratic Party nominee Hillary Clinton, despite losing the popular vote. Throughout the campaign, his political stances were described as populist, protectionist, isolationist, and nationalist, sparking numerous protests. Notably, he became the first U.S. president with no prior military or government experience. Following a special counsel investigation, it was established that Russia had in fact interfered with the 2016 election to favor Trump's campaign. Throughout his tenure, Trump propagated an unprecedented level of conspiracy theories and created many false and misleading statements in American politics. Additionally, many of his remarks and actions have been labeled as racially charged or racist, while others have also been deemed outright misogynistic. Now let's talk about Trump's opponent in the next election, the current president, Joe Biden. While I'm sure you've all seen videos of Biden tripping on the stairs of his presidential jet or falling off a bike, let's talk about what he has done so far. During his presidency, Biden enacted the American Rescue Plan Act to address the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing economic downturn. He also signed bipartisan legislation focused on infrastructure and manufacturing. Although the Build Back Better Act, which he proposed, did not pass Congress in its entirety, elements of it were included in the Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law in 2022. And he collaborated with congressional Republicans to solve the 2023 United States debt ceiling crisis through negotiations to raise the debt ceiling. Now let's talk about how these two potential presidents plan on covering the current world events we went over. During the Israel-Hamas conflict, Biden declared military backing for Israel, denounced the activities of Hamas as acts of terrorism, and directed the U.S. military to construct a port to aid the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now that we know what Biden's plan for Gaza is, let's see what Trump has in store for Gaza. Former President Donald Trump has openly criticized President Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. However, Trump himself has offered little to no insight on how he would resolve the conflict. Trump has mostly observed from the sidelines during the war, which has overshadowed Biden's re-election campaign, all while expressing general support for Israel's military actions against Hamas. He has claimed the war would not have happened under his leadership. Trump has avoided delving into the specific strategies for ending the conflict and addressing its aftermath. Now let's talk about how these two plan to handle housing prices. The former President Trump, who is the son of millionaire affordable housing developer Fred Trump, outlined his approach to addressing the competitive and costly housing market's consumer gridlock. His strategy entails reducing energy expenses initially, followed by lowering interest rates. The belief is that these measures will subsequently lead to an enhancement in the economy. Now let's see what Biden plans to do. In recent weeks, President Biden has placed considerable emphasis on housing, particularly if there's an increase of the supply of homes on the market. Publicly, Joe Biden has embraced this initiative, urging lawmakers to enact substantial federal investments in housing supply and tax credits for prospective homeowners. Okay, now it's time to talk about abortion rights. Donald Trump suggested he would support a national ban on abortions after about 15 weeks of pregnancy, expressing for the first time his backing for a specific limit on the procedure. He has credited himself with undermining the federally guaranteed right to abortion by appointing 3 U.S. Supreme Court justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now let's remember, as stated previously, that this is an essential healthcare provision, and 15 weeks is just around the start of the pregnancy. Now, let's talk about what Biden plans on doing. Biden criticized the Supreme Court's 2022 decision to overturn the landmark ruling, describing it as, quote, a fundamental right ripped away. I said on the day that Roe was overturned, the health and lives of women in this nation would now be at risk, end quote. He reiterated with his remarks, and this has unfortunately proven to be true. They've been at risk. Biden also reiterated his call for Congress to codify protections that had been provided by Roe, adding that if the bill were passed, he would immediately sign it into law. Quote, stop playing politics with the women's lives and freedom. Let the doctors do their job, end quote. Now, let's talk about school shootings. After extending sympathy and emotional support to the victims of the shooting in Perry, Iowa, and their families, Trump said, it's just horrible and so surprising to see it here, but we have to get over it. We have to move forward. Trump's comments on the shooting that occurred about 36 hours earlier were the first he had made addressing the violence. Friday's remarks were not the first time in the last year that Trump has apparently tried to deflect from having a substantial conversation about gun violence in the U.S. During a speech in April 2023 to the National Rifle Association, Trump argued that the long history of deadly school shootings in the U.S. is, quote, not a gun problem, end quote. He instead blamed the issue on Democrats, mental health issues, marijuana, and the transgender community. President Joe Biden has established the inaugural White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, fulfilling a long-standing objective of school shooting survivors and families advocating for stricter gun regulations, and increased federal research on firearm incidents. Researchers informed Education Week that the office has the potential to amplify efforts in gun-related issues, akin to how the Office of National Drug Control Policy shed light on concerns regarding drug trafficking and substance use in the 1980s. The announcement was celebrated as a triumph by March for Our Lives, an organization founded by students to champion new gun relations in the aftermath of the 2019 mass shooting, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Now, let's talk about the things we went over today. So, as you, the listeners, know, here at the TUV, we try to be as unbiased as possible and state the facts as they are. But it seems, at least to me, that no matter the subject, Trump ends up just seeming either wildly undereducated on the matter or just takes the single worst angle on it. But that's just what I'm seeing. Again, we try to be unbiased here, but I feel like besides the stuttering, President Joe Biden seems to understand and take action on every subject we have talked about today. So, all in all, I feel like he is a bit more on top of everything that most people, Democrat or Republican, give him credit for. Now, to finish this episode, I'm going to tell you all, in my opinion, who I would vote for. Doesn't matter if I was Democrat or Republican. In my opinion, after reviewing everything stated so far, I think that I personally would vote for Joe Biden as the next president. But that's just me. So, who would you vote for? Thanks for tuning in to The Unbiased View with your host, Evan Wergo. Have a good day, don't forget to listen to the facts, and tune in next time.